I'm Dr. Christy with Health by Design. I'm a chiropractor, clinical nutritionist, and kinesiologist, and I've been in the wellness field for 15 years. We're very motivated to provide patient education because we believe knowledge is power, and there's so much that we believe you can do in order to take your health into your own hands. Today, what we're going to be focusing on is how to read labels. There's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of tricky marketing that's on labels. We want to teach you how to read those so you know exactly what you're buying and what to look for. So first, let's go over the anatomy of a label. There's a lot of information on there. What you need to know is that there isn't a whole lot of standardization on labels, and companies do use tricky marketing tactics to fool you. So if you look on the back, first you're going to see that white and black part of the label called nutrition facts. This is where you would find the amount of sugar, fiber, protein, sodium, calories, as well as your RDAs. The next thing that you're going to look for is health claim and propaganda. So that's usually on the front. It's usually colorful and eye-catching, especially for kids. Like, for example, the Trick cereal box has the bunny and everybody wants the bunny. But here you'll see claims like all natural, whole grains, or organic. Then you're going to see the ingredient list. So if you go below the nutrition facts, that white and black grid, the ingredient list is usually in small print below that, and it's listed from highest quantity to lowest quantity. So sometimes people didn't realize that. For example, if the very first word is sugar, then you're going to want to stay away from that because that means that that has more sugar than anything else that will follow it. Avoiding processed grains, sugar we talked about, or hydrogenated oils in the first three ingredients. So if it has grains, sugar, or hydrogenated oils in the first three ingredients, beware. You're going to see certifications, and this is super important. We're actually going to show you below a couple of labels to look for that are easy to spot. USDA certified organic or non-GMO verified. The other thing that you're going to see above the nutrition facts is the serving sizes, and that's really important. That's where companies will hide. They'll make the label look like there's only a certain number of calories or grams of sugar or sodium in a product, but you might look above and see that the serving size is only a quarter of a cup, or that a serving size of a can of soda, for example, is only half of the can. Well, how many people only eat half of the can? So if that was the case, then you would have to double all the numbers below that. So if it said it was only 100 calories, but the serving size was a half of the bag or the can or box of whatever you're eating, then you would actually be consuming double that if you ate the whole can. So food labels, on the left here we have what to look for, and then on the right in contrast would be what to avoid. So if it's pronounceable, so if the ingredients are something that are recognizable and list all whole foods, for example. A short ingredient list. So when you start getting those ingredient lists that have a gazillion different words and all these different chemicals and things that you have, can't pronounce, that shows you the difference. So I just always kind of encourage people, if you made bread, for example, how many ingredients could you possibly put in bread? It would be water, flour, eggs, maybe some salt, or maybe some seasonings or other flavorings that you had. If you get a bag of bread from the store and it has upwards of 50 ingredients, those are chemicals. That's a processed food. Here on the left, I want you to study and kind of memorize this USDA organic here and this non-GMO project verified. These are the certified list. These are the certified labels that you want to look for in some of your common products, and they're usually right on the front and easy to see. Sometimes, depending on where you shop, this USDA organic might even be on the labels, like on the storefronts, on the shelving, for example. But if you see those, then you're good to go. These foods can still be higher in carbohydrate or sugar content, but as far as the quality and ruling out potential for antibiotics, growth hormones, and pesticides, you're good to go here. Let's go over the right side of this graph. Products to avoid: high fructose corn syrup, corn solids, or fructose. Those are all sweeteners that have been more highly linked to diabetes and heart disease than even sugar itself. We're going to go over a little bit more detail, but if you see artificial or isolated vitamins, for example, the word enriched, if you see wheat that says white wheat, but it's enriched, that simply means that in the processing of that food, they stripped out all the naturally occurring vitamins, and then they enrich it, meaning they spray synthetic vitamins back into it. So you want to stay away from those. Another thing to be avoiding on the nutrition facts labels, anything that boasts more than 100% of the recommended daily allowance. This would be most common in energy drinks. You're going to see the B vitamins, for example, sometimes they'll be 1,000 or even like 2,000% of the recommended daily allowance. I've even seen 10,000% of the recommended daily allowance. So that would be overboard, that would be mega dosing. And the reason that they do that is because you'll initially feel a high or a buzz from those types of foods, but it wouldn't be sustainable. Artificial coloring for a number of reasons. These are very toxic to the body, especially the nervous system, and in children have been linked to things like hyperactivity and attention deficit disorder. Oils that you should be aware of are things that are hydrogenated oils. This gets a little bit tricky because sometimes they don't come right out and use the word hydrogenated. Common ones would be canola, cottonseed, or sunflower oil. Another interesting fact on the cottonseed oil is that if you think of this for a second, cotton isn't really a food. Therefore, there's no regulation as far as what they can do to it or have to do to it to put it in the foods. Definitely want to avoid GMOs. We talked in another lecture that genetically modified organisms have not been studied for safety in human consumption. So if you're eating them, you are the experiment right now. So we don't yet know what the disease risk is going to be. Usually when things are new on the market, we don't see it for generations to come what the health toll will be. So be aware with that. Things that are commonly genetically modified are wheat, corn, and soy. So if it doesn't have this non-GMO project verified on wheat, corn, or soy, assume it's genetically modified. Preservatives, so all those chemical words that are on there are preservatives. Anything that says naturally flavoring, so natural flavors sounds good. Again, that's a tricky marketing ploy. Natural flavoring could be any of 200 different chemicals. So the word natural is to draw you in, but if you think of it for a minute, arsenic is natural. It doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy for you, a good idea to consume it. MSG is another one. MSG is a flavor enhancer. It used to be highly used in Oriental food restaurants, and they used to have to tell you that it was in the foods now. That's gotten to be a tricky thing. So I would encourage you after this lecture to Google search alternative names for MSG, and you'll see over 20 different names. So they start to hide that because as consumers and we get smarter, they get smarter and trickier with how they put these ingredients on the labels because they still want to sell their products. Another thing to avoid would be any products that boast that it's a lighter version, a low-fat version, or a low-calorie version. So one of the quick rules that we have in the office, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So first of all, if it's the light version of an already high-calorie food, it could still be a high-calorie food. It just has less than the original formula of that recipe. Low fat or low calorie, think of this for a second. If they take the fat or they take the calories, or even if it's a low sugar product, they have to make up for the flavor of it somewhere else because it wouldn't be palatable. So usually if it's low in fat, it's higher in sugar. And things that say no added sugar, that doesn't mean anything. It could already be a high sugar food. It just means that they didn't already add more sugar to it. So produce, we always encourage our patients to shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. Reason being is because that's where your real foods are. So your produce section, your meat, and your dairy are usually on the outside. So we always say if it's a real food, you don't need a label to tell you an apple is an apple, and you don't need a label to tell you chicken is chicken, for example, but there are produce labels, and we want to show you what those are. If you had a 5-digit code that starts with the number 9, it means it's organic. So you guys have all seen these little stickers that you have to peel off before you eat your fruit or vegetables. So that's where we're looking for that number right across that little sticker. If you have a 4-digit code starting with a 4, that means it's conventional. So conventional means that it's grown with chemicals, it's grown with pesticides, it could be genetically modified. And then if you have a 5-digit code starting with the number 8, it means it's genetically modified. So these are harder to find. Usually you're going to see the first two, either the number starting with a 9 or the conventional 4-digit codes. It's rare to see this number starting with 8 because they've changed some of the labeling laws, and companies don't have to disclose to you if it's genetically modified. It's actually a choice. The company has a choice whether or not they want to disclose that information. So it doesn't mean that it's necessarily that we agree with it, but that's the way it is. So we went over some of these, but some of the misleading claims, light, for example, if processed to be either low in calories or fat, they usually make up for it with increasing the sugar. Multigrain also is one of those things that sounds like it's a healthy idea, but it just means that there's more than one type of grain, and they still could be refined grain. So unless the product is marked as whole grain, that's what you want to look for instead of multigrain, it still could be high in refined grains. Natural, we just kind of talked about that, but it doesn't mean that it necessarily resembles anything natural. It just means that at some point the manufacturer had a natural source. The word organic is tricky because it doesn't have the USDA organic label above. What that means is only a portion of the ingredients are organic in there. No added sugar. Some products are already naturally high in sugar, so the fact that they didn't add more sugar doesn't necessarily mean that it's a healthy option. Usually no added sugar could also be loaded with unhealthy sugar substitutes that you need to look out for. A lot of the sugar substitutes are shown to raise your risk of diabetes just as much as eating sugar alone, and it's very neurotoxic to your brain. Children should never eat foods that are that have sugar substitutes. Low-calorie products have to contain 1/3 fewer calories than the same brand's original product. So, like we said, if the original product already had high calories, 1/3 fewer calories might not make it healthy. Low fat, be careful and read the ingredients listed on the back. The label almost always means that the fat has been reduced at the cost of adding more sugar. Low carb. Recently, low carb diets have been linked with improved health. However, processed foods that are labeled low carb are usually just processed junk foods, similar to processed low fat junk foods. Another, in the same train of thinking, is the gluten-free revolution, and I see that that's in a couple more bullets. But just because a product is gluten-free, if it's a gluten-free cookie or a gluten-free cracker or a gluten-free snack food, it's still a carbohydrate, it's still a snack food, meaning it should be eaten in a limited fashion. Made with whole grains. There's probably very little whole grain in the product. Again, you need to check that nutrition fact label and see if it's in the first 3 ingredients. If not, then the amount could be negligible. However, that product could still be claimed that it's made with whole grains. Fortified enriched, I always laugh over this one because it would sound like, yeah, I want the enriched version of something. But what that means is that the nutrients have been stripped during the processing of that product. The naturally occurring nutrients have been stripped. And so they fortify it or enrich it with artificial vitamins and put it back in. So an example would be enriched vitamin D milk. We talked about gluten. Fruit flavored is another one that they'll get you with. So many processed foods that have a name that refers to a natural flavor, such as strawberry yogurt, there might not be any fruit in that product. There's just chemicals in there that are designed to taste like fruit. So I always laugh, do you remember watermelon, Big League Chew, the gum, or like the Bubblicious? I don't know who decided that that was the chemical that tastes like natural watermelons, or grape flavored candy, for example. Doesn't taste anything like a grape or an actual watermelon. So be cautious on the fruit flavored labeling. 0 trans fat actually means that less than 0.5 grams of trans fats per serving. So if the serving sizes are misleadingly small, the product can actually contain a lot of trans fats. So that's where we taught you up above to always look at the serving size. Because if it's less than the entire container, you have to multiply the amounts of fats, carbs, sugars, that kind of thing by the amount. MSG, we talked about doing a Google search for all the tricky names for MSG. So here I put some of the most common. The ones that I see all the time are maltodextrin, anything hydrolyzed, like hydrolyzed yeast or yeast extract, autolyzed yeast. A lot of the words with yeast are in there. Glutamic acid, all these weird words. So just look, you need to read the ingredients. Many names for sugar as well. So we kind of talked about this. As you get smarter as a consumer, they need to hide this stuff in there because they want their products to taste good. They want their products to be addictive. Basically, they want to make money and they want you to come back for more. So if you're addicted to it and you can't just eat one, then they win. Beet sugar, brown sugar, buttered sugar, cane sugar. Some of these sound like the healthier version of sugar, even coconut palm sugar. But again, depending on your obesity, your health risk, what your health goals are, you might need to be more strict than other people about even some of these healthier sources of carbohydrate. A lot of sugars are hidden under the names of syrups, so look out for some of these, including agave, which a lot of people think is a healthier version. And then other added sugars, barley, malt powder, fructose, lactose, corn sweetener, fruit juice concentrate, that's a huge one. They use the word fruit juice concentrate, again, to make you think that it's sweetened with natural measures. But fruit juice concentrates, look at the serving sizes and the amount of carbohydrate. Even some of the healthier fruit juices or smoothie substitute might have up to 60 grams of sugar in one serving, even though it's just pureed fruits and vegetables. So you start to get these fruits and vegetables down into a concentrated form without the naturally occurring fiber, and it could really sidetrack your weight loss or health goals. So we only need to look at a couple of these supplement labels for you to start to get the idea. Vitamin A, for example, if the source given is something pronounceable, recognizable, like a carrot, then you can assume it's natural. If you start to see some of these chemically sounding words, acetate or palmitate, or if the source isn't given, you assume it's a synthetic form. Vitamin B complex, the natural form of vitamin B would be nutritional yeast. So we talked about yeast as far as MSG. Nutritional yeast or brewer's yeast is not a form of MSG. It's a naturally occurring substance that's high in B vitamins. So I want to make that distinguish that. So if it says nutritional yeast, assume it's natural. If the source isn't given, assume it's synthetic. Same thing for most of the B vitamins as we go through. Yeast is a common natural source. B12 liver is the natural source. So you can kind of read through all of these, but if you can't pronounce it, or if it's a word followed by a number, words and numbers combined together usually are chemicals. The reason we talk about that, the difference in reading supplement labels, is because not all supplements are created equally. In an attempt to get more nutrition and vitamins in your diet, you could actually be doing more harm than good unknowingly. And the supplement companies know this. So it might be a lot less expensive for a company to put together a bunch of these chemical synthetic isolates that are just meant to look like the naturally occurring vitamin, but the body doesn't recognize it the same way that they would recognize nutrition from actually occurring foods. Because, for example, if we take the top one, when your body gets vitamin A from a carrot, it's naturally occurring in nature with all the cofactors and enzymes that your body needs in order to digest and absorb the vitamin A. So when you start breaking it down and getting these isolates, your body actually looks at some of those synthetic supplements as chemicals and will try to get rid of them and detoxify them. So what we have for you following is some practice. So what we talked about on the front of the label is things that are eye-catching and that draw you or your kids in. We've got the animated character, lots of colors. We've got the health claim that there's at least a little bit of whole grains in there. It actually says it twice, so they're really boasting on this whole grain thing here. If you zoom in even further, they actually tell you that it's naturally and artificial fruit, and it's flavored, it's sweetened. So you always have to look at the fine print on these things. So that's just the front. The front is all the propaganda and the marketing and the tactics to get you to buy it. What they're hoping is that you don't actually turn it over and look at the labels that we just discussed. So let's see why. So here we go, fine print. So this is the nutritional facts label that we saw before, that we said has your calories, amount of fats, your cholesterol, carbohydrate, sugars, and protein. So if your trainer or your nutritionist tells you to look at your macros, this is what you're looking at. Down below, this is your RDA, which stands for recommended daily allowance of some of the most common vitamins and minerals. But where the important information is up here. So this tells you that a serving size is actually 1 cup. I don't know how many of you have actually ever measured out a cup of cereal, but it's a lot smaller than an actual cereal bowl. So you want to look at that, and then you also want to go below the label and come over here to ingredients. So we said make sure it doesn't have grains or sugar or syrup in the first 3 ingredients, and this has all 3 of them. So that means that it has more grain, sugar, and corn syrup than any of these things down below, which are supposed to be vitamins. So now we see a bunch of items that are hard to pronounce, unrecognizable. We see the combination of words and numbers. So these are some of the toxic artificial colorings that we see, and some of the preservatives. BHT is in this one. It doesn't tell you what the source of the vitamins are, so we're going to assume that they're synthetic. So let's switch to another label. So let's contrast this, probably a no, not so healthy choice, with maybe a healthier version of a cereal. So here's a Kashi cereal box label. If we zoom in, you can see right away that USDA organic on the front. And that's really all you can see, but see, they're not so worried about being so flashy and everything. There's no health claims on the front of this box. So if it didn't have the USDA organic and it only said organic promise, you really wouldn't know what % of the ingredients in this product were organic. But since you have the USDA organic, it's a safe, as long as it matches up with the amount of carbs that you're allowed to have in your specific program. So then on the back, on this one, we see that the serving size is actually 28 biscuits, so I didn't measure that out, but that seems like a lot more than a cup of cereal. You see down here that there is only 9 grams of sugar and that the fiber is 5 grams. So anytime you do eat a bread or a cereal, we always say to look for at least 4 grams of fiber. The more fiber that's in there, the less that these sugars or the grains are going to increase your blood sugar levels. But that's a decent amount for something like a cereal. Now look at this ingredient list compared with the Trick cereal. A lot shorter ingredient list is what we looked for. This is all pronounceable things that you would recognize. It does have wheat in the front, but it doesn't say multigrain. It says whole grains, and it does indicate that those are organic. It does have a sweetener in the first few ingredients, even though there are only a couple of ingredients. So it's still cane juice, so it is a sweetened product, even though it's one of the healthier sugars. Cinnamon, and then cinnamon flavor. So the cinnamon flavor is the only real questionable thing in there. I don't know what that means, but overall, that's a much healthier look. A couple other labels that I just want to draw your attention to. Sugar can be hidden in some things that are marketed to us as healthier snacks. A lot of your granolas, only 1 tablespoon here has 14 grams of sugar, so that's just as much as sometimes eating a I don't know, a candy bar or having a full glass of juice. Again, 2 teaspoons has 10 grams of sugar. So that's not a huge, like nobody eats 1 tablespoon of this stuff. They usually eat handfuls, or you seem like pouring it into their mouth, or sitting down, not even being aware of how much you're consuming. So that's where, that's where you need to look at the serving size on the ingredient, which is on the back. We were taught that oatmeal is a heart-healthy breakfast cereal, but not if it's coated in sugar and not if it's a processed oat. So steel-cut oats are a lot healthier for you because it has all of the intact fiber and protein in it, whereas processed oats or microwavable oats, they have no health value whatsoever, and they're loaded with sugar. A lot of these cinnamon and spice or flavored ones, again, 1 tablespoon has 16 grams. Nobody's eating a tablespoon or 5 teaspoons of a food, so be cautious. Your salad dressings and condiments is another area for hidden sugars. So while you're trying to make the right choices and have a salad or a low-calorie, nutrient-dense meal replacement, you could be coating that healthy salad with high sugar-containing dressings. So again, 2 teaspoons has 7 grams of sugar or 10 grams of sugar, and this is, this is sold in the refrigerator section, in the produce section, so you might be under the impression that it's a healthy version. Peanut butter, yikes. Take a look at these ingredients. Just going on what we learned today, this Organic Nature's Promise only has 1 ingredient, organic peanuts. Some products have peanuts and salt, which would be great if it's sea salt, but now over here you start to get artificial oils, sugar, hydrogenated oils. This one has cottonseed, which isn't even a food product, and this has additional preservatives in it. And then some of these even heart-healthy snacks, if it makes a claim on the front that says heart healthy, you still need to read the label on the back for the amount of carbohydrate content and, again, artificial oils and sweeteners that are in there. So as you can see, there's a lot to know and to educate yourself to be a smart consumer. A lot of this stuff is misleading and tricky, and it's put that together that way for a reason. But you can empower yourself through getting educated on how to buy the right things. So again, we hope this helps you on your health journey, and I look forward to teaching you additional topics in the future.